Hey,
Hey,
live on the internet.
it's a weird concept, isn't it?
Um, Twitch is a conceptually awesome and weird all at the same time.
It's so bizarre, isn't it?
Um,
There will be a little bit of a delay, obviously.
yeah.
So I'm going to be like one of those really bad Japanese movies where you're going to hear my voice and then my lips are still going to be moving. It'll be
it's fine.
fantastic.
Oh, I see. That way, then if that way though, if you flick me off, it can be super delayed. Um, or get really angry and are like, "Eat a dick, motherfuckers."
I would never say that.
Of course you would. This is so weird because I'm not um like it's lagging like mad.
mm, is it really bad?
No, it's probably not for everyone. I'm saying just for me.
Okay.
Maybe if the 615 windows I have open I closed, that might help.
That might be a start.
Especially Chrome.
Did you ever
It's
watch the IT crowd?
no.
You need to watch that show. It is the best. But Jen is the IT manager and she has no idea. She doesn't have any clue about computers. And they come in to fix her computer one day and she's got like 500 like pop-ups because their computer's infected with viruses and they're like, "What are you doing?" And they're like closing and she's like, "No, I just organized those the way I like them."
Oh, well, see, that reminds me of, have you ever seen The Website Is Down?
No.
You're probably too young for that. That's like
Whoa.
those of us that, yeah, I'm old. I'm an old man. Um, See, now this is what I'm saying. Like, we've already gotten cracking. I knew this was going to happen.
What?
Knew we were going to be instant best friends and then we were going to start talking about stuff really good right away. And I
Okay,
haven't
I
even
won't
started
say
talking about it
anything.
yet. So let me get the thing going here and we'll go. So
If I'm too
hang tight.
loud too, let me know. I can like
Yeah, it's okay.
push this.
I got it on my end. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Um. All right, hold on. I'm gonna kick us off. Okay.
All right.
Wait. False start. Exactly. This is what happens. You have to hit the, just saying you have to hit the record button first before you start everything. Otherwise, it doesn't actually start recording. So hold on. Uh. Hello.
Yellow.
Hi.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. And hi, people out there. Welcome to Too Much Information with Sean Arnold. My name is Sean Arnold, just like it has been since I was born. Uh, this is actually fun. So, for those of you that are listening to this in podcast form, it's sometime in the future. And what you don't know is that this is being broadcast live on my guest Twitch channel right now, which basically means at some point I'm sure this will technically completely fall apart, but we'll deal with that when we get there. My guest tonight is a Twitch streamer, a friend of mine, an online friend of mine now that I met through Jeremy Lopez, who you guys have heard me talk to before, and you guys know Jeremy. She's a Twitch streamer. She's a cosplayer. I think she's a pretty good cook.
I
I
try.
want to talk. I want to talk about that some too. But you can find her at www.twitch.tv/Kerrty, Kerty. I'd like to welcome to
Why?
information. Yeah, exactly. Kerrty.
Sean.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. It's
How
the
you
first time
doing?
I've actually seen you, too.
Oh, really?
I just know you by your screen name.
I know. I apologize for you having to like actually physically see me. It is that's
Oh.
what's so weird about Twitch. So this is an interesting, conceptually interesting, right? Because it is this. And Jeremy and I, in our last podcast, we talked about Twitch just as a platform, and it is very interesting the relationships you can develop with people.
Oh my
You know,
gosh, it's so bizarre.
But it is kind of one way because we see you all the time, except for, when you have a cold and no cam stream.
Yeah.
But,
And that's actually,
but
that's really hard too, because if you were to meet me in person, I'm the same person. But for me, I just see your screen names every day. So
yeah.
I only interact with you through chat or just words that I see on the screen. So to see your face and hear your voice, it's so much different. It's such a bizarre concept.
It is. But what's funny, I think, is I feel like a lot of people that I haven't met in person, I know exactly what they would be like if I met them in person.
I'm not even going to lie to you. Like, I think of Lopez as one of my best friends. And
Yeah,
I've only known him for a year, but I talk to him almost every day. It's so strange. Most of my friends online, even, I just got married last December, and one of my mods in my channel was actually at my wedding. It's a crazy world, man. Just meeting people online, and I see these people every day. And even some days I think, man, I haven't seen that person online in a long time. I hope they're okay. Or, like Discord too, right? So Discord's another outlet where you can chat with people offline, and I'm constantly talking to people online. I talk to people online more than I talk to people that I know in real life.
yeah. It's kind of funny. I mean, Jeremy. Well, it's not exactly like Twitch, but Jeremy and I actually met because we were doing like an internet news show, where people sort of came on via, it was Skype at the time, but it was through like the NBC affiliate here in Atlanta. And I actually just heard his voice, right? So we were in like the pre-show meeting.
Great voice. Definitely a radio voice.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, that guy's voice is great. And, and like my wife was in radio and she does TV, and I just pick up on those sorts of things. And I sent him a note off stream, and I literally said, I mean, it was probably now in retrospect, like maybe a little creepy, but I was just like, dude, your voice is so great. It's like, I just want to hug it. And that's how we started talking. And then I found out he had a podcast, and then I invited myself onto his podcast. And that's actually one of the big things that made me want to start podcasting, which is wild. And then he wasn't even doing Twitch at the time. And of course, then we met, IRL, and then he started doing Twitch. And then I'm just like, wow, he's my friend. I'll support him. And then you end up in this crazy Twitch world.
Yeah, my experience with that was I was working with a guy, and he was talking about how he was watching a girl play Call of Duty, but instead she was playing with her puppy the whole time, and people were just throwing money at her. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, you're a gamer, you're a girl, you're cute. He's like, you should get on there and play video games. And I've played video games since Atari.
Me too.
So I've been a gamer since before I could talk, probably.
Wait, you were like -5 years old when Atari came out.
No.
You possibly have been playing video games since Atari.
What year did Atari come out?
I want to say it was like 82.
I think so. Well, my brother is 7 years older than me, so I always kind of had that outlet of the hand-me-downs, So when he got the Nintendo, I got the Atari. When he got the Super Nintendo, I got the Nintendo. Like, it was always that kind of hand-me-down of, here, I don't want this anymore, you can have it. So I've been a gamer for as long as I can remember, and I've always been really animated when I play video games. So he was like, you're going to be perfect for Twitch. And it was one of those outlets that I had too, because I moved away from home, which I'm from a very small town. So everybody knows everybody. So for a small town girl to move to like a big city, it was a really big deal for me. I was moving away from like my family and my friends, and I was with this boyfriend, and I didn't know anybody. So to have Twitch, it was a really good outlet for me to, one, play video games, because that's what I do in my spare time anyways, and two, meet new people and talk to people so that I wasn't alone all the time, you know? And that's kind of the cool thing about it, is that you just meet so many cool people.
Yeah, you do. You really do. Let's unpack some of this a little bit, though. So,
Okay.
First, um, believe it or not, the Atari was actually released the first time ever in 1977.
Oh my God, really?
So I was almost 3.
Okay, so I guess we were probably late to the game on the Atari train.
But it stayed in production until 1990, which I didn't even know it had. They didn't actually stop making them until 1990.
So we got it when it was super discounted then, right? Like that's probably what ended up happening.
Yeah. And then I remember, and I can't remember the year. I want to say it was maybe 85 when the Nintendo came out. That was the big that was. I mean, my dad was a programmer, right? Like back in the day. And so I had computers around like from when I was really really little.
Oh wow, like the giant ones. Like you had a bedroom for just the giant computer.
That's how he started. But I want to say I was maybe I want to say I was maybe 9 or so, or 8 or 9, and I got an Apple IIc, which was where like the CPU and the keyboard, were all one thing.
Oh yeah.
And then you had that green, you know what I mean?
Like, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Green monitor, but so you could take and it would take floppy disk. You could take it around with you. But
our school had those, and we thought we were so cool because they had the different colors, right?
Yeah,
and you always wanted to sit at your favorite color. There was like blue and green and like purple or something.
Well, no, this was before even that. These were the first ones, like cream plastic. Like that was before what you're talking about when they ended up like sort of making them. Because the whole idea of a personal computer at that point was a little bit foreign, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And you had very simple like text-based games and stuff where you're just moving a little like white blip around on the screen.
Yes.
I mean like Pong, but like it was everything was very very little simple. And actually at that point it's a little hilarious because if you think about it, at that point consoles, Atari, were far superior to the PCs.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, as far as just graphics.
Graphics, yeah, alone.
I mean, and then you obviously moved, but I mean, I remember then I got Nintendo, and I'd always been around them, but when I first got Nintendo and I played Super Mario Brothers, like that was it. Like I was done.
I'm still addicted to it. So for my birthday a couple weeks ago, actually, I got a Nintendo Switch for my birthday.
Nice.
And it has all the retro games on it. And I've already beat 2 of the Marios. I had to go back and replay them. I can't stop. It's so good.
It is. And here's what's funny too. I think the worst beating in my life I ever got was because of Nintendo.
What?
So
do explain.
I apologize for anyone that's not listening or that I'm about to spoiler alert.
I'm about to call out.
Well, spoiler alert. This was before, I guess, the whole we just were around the time when the Santa thing was breaking. There was no Santa.
Oh, and, there's no Santa?
I know, I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
I fucked it up.
I'm traumatized.
Then but we were so the way my family did it is gifts to each other. We opened on Christmas Eve night, and then Santa gifts were Christmas Day, Christmas morning.
Oh.
That's how we broke it up. And also, a lot of people do Santa gifts are not wrapped, but the way we did it is all the Christmas morning gifts were still wrapped. I had friends that were like, no, Santa doesn't wrap presents. I was like, yeah, he does. We had that fight. Like,
all the elves wrap them, duh.
I know. It's clearly those families were psychopaths that didn't wrap.
They were just cheap. Parents didn't know how to wrap gifts.
That's right. So anyway, I was so jacked because I knew I kind of, I had been really hinting hard around the Nintendo, right, for Christmas. And I got up at like 3:45 in the morning, and it had to have been only probably like an hour or something before my parents went to bed. And I don't have any brothers or sisters. So I went into the living, and I opened everything with no one there. Like it was, I just started, and because I was looking for the Nintendo, And then I got it out, and again, like because I was into tech stuff. I mean, I was like probably 9 or 10, but I figured out how to get the RGB cables and get it hooked up to the computer. And I was seriously probably on like level 5-3 or whatever when my parents woke up at like 6 o'clock, and my mom walks in the room and goes, "What the fuck?" And I caught like the worst. They were so mad. And the best part about that Christmas, though, I'll have to put these in your Discord. I think I still have them in an album. So what my mom did, because they had no pictures from the whole thing, she would hand me a gift and like sprinkle wrapping paper around me and take a picture.
Oh, yes. My mom had done that before as well.
But I had been crying because I got to beat it, right? And so every picture
tears. She was like, "These are tears of joy." He was just so happy to get this Nintendo.
Yeah, and it was clearly obvious that I was not. They were like, "You'd think he'd be happy. That picture doesn't look happy with."
She's like giving you the glare look around the corner, like, "Don't you tell him."
Yeah, 100%. So anyway, that's how I got started. That was how I feel like my video game life started. But then it was just, I always had a console. Like I always had a console.
Yeah, we did too.
You know what I mean? Like there's always a console in the house, no matter what.
We did too, and we always had a ton of games. Like, I don't know, you guys might not have them down there. We had like, they were family videos. I think that's a North thing, but it was essentially a movie store, you know. But they had video games there.
That was the name of the store.
Yeah, they had Nintendo games there, and we would. Yeah, we got stores that did that. And you could go rent these Nintendo games, and it was awesome. So we would always do that. And believe it or not, actually, my mom is a big gamer. So after work every night, my mom would come home, and I mean, we lived in this tiny town, right? Like, I lived in bumfuck Egypt. There was nothing where we lived. Anywhere, you had to drive 20 minutes to get to the nearest stoplight, let alone a store, you know? So there was nothing to do other than video games, and we would just play video games every single night, whether it was Bubble Bobble or Mario or whatever, you know? So video games, for me anyways, it's like, it's life. It's all I've ever done. It's so weird it's so lame to say almost.
It's not. I mean, I was from the same sort of, I mean, the town I grew up in was like one general store, one post office, one Baptist church. That was like the whole town.
Yeah.
Just nothing going on. This is an interesting conversation I've had with my wife because she's 8 years older than I am. And I really feel like I was kind of somewhere between she and I was really the inflection point. Like, video games didn't really show up in her childhood, right? It wasn't until later because just they weren't around. But then by the time it got to me, I always had them around.
Yeah.
And it's still very much like, even I think when we got married, she was just like, "You still play video games?" And I'm like, the average, you know, and then I have to start, you know, I'm sure you do it too. It's like the stats. It's like the average video gamer is like 40, right?
Oh yeah,
so,
absolutely.
You know, it's not a kid. You're thinking about like, now don't get me wrong, our nephew that like plays Pokemon and, you know, there's that kind of stuff. But there is also this whole different world of, these things are not being written for 8-year-olds.
No.
Right? Like,
and I feel like the real gamers, I don't want to like, oh God, I just said the real gamers, but I want to say that they were made in the 80s and 90s. They really were. And because that was like the prime of the video games, you know what I mean? And that kind of comes back on like, I love Twitch so much because it's like going over to your best friend's house and watching them play video games. You know what I mean? Like, you always had to take turns with the controllers or whatever. Like, okay, I die, it's your turn or whatever. And it's essentially that. Like, except I never pass the controller over to anybody else.
Oh, right. That was sort of like maybe the advantage or disadvantage, because people are always like, "You didn't have brothers or sisters? Like, wasn't that lonely?" And I was like, no, I don't have to share shit with anybody.
Yeah, that's true. My brother was always too old for me. He was always too cool for me. You know what I mean? So if I ever wanted to play with him and his friends, I'd have to wait on them hand and foot for, you know, like a week straight before they're like, all right, you can come in and watch us play, but you can't say a word. You can only watch us. And I mean, for me, like, I didn't care. You know what I mean? I was just hanging out, watching them play video games. And essentially, that's kind of just how I see Twitch is you're just hanging out, watching somebody play video games.
Yeah, and I guess I don't, thinking of it from a subculture standpoint, like I don't, I would imagine, I mean, did you find that other girls that you were your age were playing games, or were you sort of
No. So that's a whole different rabbit hole, right? So I grew up with my brother, and he always had his guy friends over, and it was kind of like a ragtag bunch of individuals that were always at our house. Whether my brother was there or not, they were there. So I always had these guys around, these older men as influences. I did have girlfriends, kind of, in school, but I was always considered like one of the guys, you know? But I did actually have one of my best friends was named Kerrty, ironically, and we played video games together all the time. So I did have a couple girls that liked video games, but it was hard. One, it was hard for me to relate to girls because I mostly hung out with dudes. And two, people were few and far in between. So again, I had to travel really far to like hang out with people. So I had this little neighbor girl that I used to hang out with, but she did have a Nintendo and we would play Mario and stuff. But other than that, that's kind of where that ended.
So now I'm going to get a bit serious.
Oh God.
Just because I'm curious. And we were talking off stream and off pod off before the show, and I touched on this a tad, but I struggle a lot because I am in like every majority, right? I'm a dude. I'm white. I don't really subscribe to any religion these days, but I was raised, in a Christian world, right? Like,
right.
But I'm also like, even though where I grew up, it seems strange. I'm also extremely liberal, right? And I don't mean that in like these days, what you think of in the modern political framework, but I'm just a very liberal guy, and I'm married to a very successful, very intelligent, very pretty woman, right? And before I got married, I think I never probably thought much about what it was like to be a woman anywhere, right? In work, in social situations, and whatever. And then I think when you have a partner and a best friend, you kind of start to have this conversation. So it's interesting to me because it feels like there's kind of two parts to this question.
Okay.
And because I feel like I don't think danger is the right word, but I feel like maybe as a woman streamer, and if I accidentally say anything sexist, I promise that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm actually trying to figure out how to get to what I'm getting at without sounding like an asshole. But I feel like, I don't think danger is the right word, but I feel like that it's different, right? For
yes.
a woman putting themselves out there, right?
Absolutely.
On camera, on stream.
Absolutely.
Sort of into your life. And so that's sort of like that side. And I'd love to hear like your thought process when you were deciding, okay, I'm going to put my face right on
the internet
for everyone to see. And then, but on the other side, I feel like when you look at the streaming ecosystem, because there's obviously now like hundreds of thousands of channels.
Yeah. All the nerdy girls have come out.
They have, but on the other hand, I feel like there are people like you that legitimately love games, that are legitimately into it, because again, it's fun. It's like podcasting. You can create content. You like to create content people can consume, but then there are a lot of people that are just like, look at my tits. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
That's the driver. It's like, wait a second, you didn't know what a controller was until like 35 minutes ago, and now you've got a Twitch channel and you're pimping for donations, and you know what I mean? Like
exactly. Oh no, and I've been to channels like that where I've tried to reach out and I've tried to find other girls to interact with. Now that it sounds so dumb, but now that I'm older, I kind of crave relationships with women, like other strong women. I never had that, and I've been invited to channels and, you know, like groups for just gamer girls and stuff, and it's rough. Like, I went to this one channel, and this girl, God bless her, she was blessed with such beautiful melons, and she really loved to show them. But when I went in there one day, I was like, you know, hi, like, it's nice to meet you, like, finally get to see you. She was like, yeah, I'm playing on hardcore mode and blah, 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 like trying to make herself out to be this awesome gamer. And I know for a fact, because I've played that game, that she was playing on easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
100% knew she was playing on easy, and I wasn't going to call her out. But at the same time, it's like, why are you lying? Don't, you know, like, if you're going to do it right. Don't lie to your audience, and don't try to make yourself out to be someone that you're not, because eventually people are going to see through that. And I guess that's kind of the hard part, is I try to be very honest with everybody that I meet. Anybody who knows me personally knows that I am very blunt. I don't sugarcoat anything. I will tell you how it is. And to meet people that are really fake online, it's hard to get past, but it's there. And a lot of people just put on these like fake personas online, and then they're totally different people offline. And I think there's a big stigma with that, and it's hard. And I think people get to the point where they don't trust in the beginning too. You know what I mean? Like, when they come to you, they have to feel you out for a bit to see, are you who you say you are? Are you fake? Are you, you know what I mean? And I do get a lot of questions in chat, you know, like, what else do you play? How long have you been playing? Like, it's a different world, and it's hard too, because I get interrogated a lot by men, not necessarily on stream, but off stream. Like, do you think you're better because you're a woman and you can get tips or whatever? Like, no, that's not the point. And I've told people a million times, like, I'm not here for the money. I'm here because I play video games off stream as well as on stream. If I'm not on stream playing, I'm off stream playing. Like, I'm always playing video games, and that's a hard stigma to get past, I guess. People don't think that girls like video games that much, you know?
I can confirm that with your Steam pop-ups.
Yes. Yeah. See, proof.
She's not streaming right now, but she's 100% playing games.
Yeah. All the time.
So do you think, I mean, so what was that like when you, I mean, or did you not think about it until after, or before you made the decision to stream? Did you say, I'm probably going to have to deal with some crap?
I knew that I was going to have to deal with some crap. So I know you touched on earlier that I do cooking. So I was a pastry chef for a long time, and I worked in a kitchen with all men. Actually, I worked in 3 different kitchens at the same time. I was a pastry chef for 3 restaurants at the same time, and it was all men in all of the restaurants. And that was hard too. When you're a woman working in a men-dominated industry, you have more to prove. And I don't want to make that sound bad, but it's true. You have to prove yourself, and you have to gain that trust from them that you're not like out to get them, or you're the real thing. You know what I mean? Like, you can do just as good as them.
Well, there's nothing more I don't know if emasculating is the right word.
It was, though.
or threatening to an insecure man than a talented woman.
I was very fortunate, and the guys that I worked with were all super sweet, and I love them to pieces, and I still talk to most of them. So that was good. And that's actually how I met my husband, was we ended up working in the same kitchen together. So, I mean, some good came out of it. But again, with streaming, I knew that I was going to have to deal with some bullshit when I got on there. And I think I've mentioned this before. If I go on stream and I don't have a camera, my viewership drops exponentially. And it's
gross.
It's kind of creepy, right?
Yeah, it's gross.
So
Super
creepy.
gross.
So
I mean, I don't watch if you don't have a cam up, but it's no, I'm just kidding.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, that's such
But
a
it's
yeah,
true.
of course.
And I
Sucks.
go in that knowing like, all right, well, I'm going to have a non-stream day or a non-camera day, so, it's going to be a rough night or a slow night, but
Yeah,
sometimes you just don't want to have a camera on your face,
yeah, sure. And again, my medium doesn't have visuals. You know what I mean? Like in the podcast world, so it's something that's also just weird because I don't. It's not. It's just not a consideration in what I do. And obviously it's also not live generally. So it's just super different. But again, also too, I'm a dude. Like I feel like and again, I guess my point of that is I'm constantly trying to put myself in situations. And obviously my wife has helped me with this a lot over the years to try to empathize, if that's the right word. Or rather, you know, think about it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Um, and she works in television, right? Which same thing, right? I mean, she's literally been in those situations where guys in charge have been like, do things for me, and if you want to succeed.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, she was like, I'm talented, go fuck yourself, right?
Good for
Like I'll be
her.
I'll be all right. You know what I mean? And she's gotten very far, but I feel bad because she's got a ton of self-esteem, and I know there are other people that don't, and what happens when those people are put in that terrible situation. You know what I mean? They feel like they're like they're victims,
Well, it's
right?
true though, and I'm not a very big girl. Like I'm 5'2", and most of my life I've been like 120 pounds. So I'm like kidnappable and sellable, like, so I feel like a lot of times people feel like they can push me around because I'm little, but growing up with brothers, I mean, I've one thing he did teach me was to kind of, you can either get your ass kicked or you can fight back. And I've always been the kind of person to fight back. I've never been one to give up and settle. I remember one time I was on the playground and I got sent to timeout, and they put you up like against a brick wall where a teacher could watch you, and that was like your timeout. You just had to stand there. And there was
Mm.
this older boy there, and he was picking on me and he was making fun of me, and I grabbed him and threw him into the wall, and he hit his head on the wall and he started crying, and I got in so much trouble. But for some reason I like specifically remember like, like, how dare you make me feel this way, and like I just got so mad and I just shoved him into the wall. But I've always kind of had that fight, I think.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and I don't, and I guess too, it's weird. Like, I feel like I also just, this is where generationally, and I never thought I would be old enough, I think, to where you start to think of yourself as like being in a different generation than people. And like, I grew up differently than you know what I mean? But I mean, I'm 45, I turned 45 last month. And, eh, it, I know there were things that were okay when I was a kid that are not okay anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but on the other hand, I feel like sometimes now I'm getting far afield, but now I'm just interested in what you think about this. Um, and fortunately, I don't have to deal with this because I've been married for 14 years, right? So, and the last thing I'd ever want to do is be single again. But on the other hand, it's like I think that definitely we're better with it. People are aware of like not objectifying women, not feeling like women are inferior, not feeling like they're all they are is what you see, right? Like all those sorts of things. However, and again, I'm not single, but I have single friends, and a lot of my friends now are like, well, it's weird though, because almost now, if you think someone's attractive and you indicate that you think they're attractive, which is where I think it all starts, because the first thing before you know anyone is you're probably going to see them, right? Unless you meet them
Absolutely.
online thing, that somehow now it's swung way far in the other direction where it's like, if I feel like a scumbag just because I think someone's pretty or handsome or whatever, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm really glad I'm not single. But
I don't think that's a bad thing though. Like, I'm going to tell you one thing. If I don't think you're attractive, I'm not going to be with you. And I don't care how shallow that sounds. Like, you have to think that the person that you're with is somewhat attractive, right? Like, you have to be attracted to them. Like, I don't want to get graphic or anything, but like you're taking this person to bed. Like you got to look at them, you know, you have to, there's something about a personality, of course, and how they make you feel and all of that. That's really important, but you have to be attractive to the person you're with. Like,
You do. You
and I
do.
know that when I was growing up, it was a big thing where like, oh, well, you know, it's not the looks, it's their personality. No, it absolutely is their looks. Like, I have to be attracted to you. Like, I don't know. You can call me shallow. I don't care. But if I don't feel warm and fuzzy when I look at you, or when you're just waking up and I can't be like, man, he's cute, you know? Like, I just don't think it's gonna work.
Yeah, I think it's shallow if that's the only thing. You know, I mean, that's the hook, right? If that's
Well,
the
yeah.
only,
I mean, there's
right?
women that are like, oh, he's got to be hot and he's got to have $1 million and he's got to got a great car. Like, no, like I don't care about any of that. Like, money isn't a big deal to me at all. I don't care what you have. I'm not materialistic at all. But you have to be a good person, and I think that personality does make you a little more attractive, but you have to still be partially attractive to that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, of course, and that was the thing I was going to say is like, I do think 100%, like there are people over the course of my life, my wife included, that I thought were beautiful the first time I ever saw them. But then after I got to know them, it like
You're
almost
like,
takes it
wow.
different, like a different level, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But you know, the other side of that is that y- that that doesn't also mean that attractive is the same for everybody. That's where I think people get
No,
disconnected, right? Like this idea
absolutely
of
not.
Heidi Klum and you know what I mean, where somebody paints this image of what is supposed to be beautiful and everything that doesn't fit in that box. You know, so yeah, if you're one of those people too, and believe me, like growing up as an athlete, you know, playing baseball until I was 23 years old and in the South, you know, which is can be a little
You
backwards.
were like
Like,
the prime piece of man meat.
well, no, I mean, I'm saying on the other end, like most of the guys that I knew, it, you know, especially when we were younger, like they were just out looking for like that kind of playboy playmate kind of girl,
The trophy wife.
but they didn't even, but no, that's the thing. They didn't even want a wife, right? Like they were just looking to run
I'm just
around and
saying,
get
like the
laid.
trophy wife, the piece of
Yeah.
arm candy, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, and then that's just such a crazy thing, but it's just, it's, I mean, again, I'm glad that people are now more aware. And I think this dovetails back into your bit about the internet and a girl like in Twitch and putting yourself out there because it, I think it's actually more dangerous now with the proliferation of online stuff. And I don't mean necessarily physically dangerous, but because to your point, like people can, they're effectively anonymous, and
Absolutely. And they're
you know, you
watching me.
don't, yeah, and there's
They're
no
literally watching me.
yeah, and there's no social contract to hold them in place, right? Like if you
Absolutely.
were in a grocery store,
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? Somebody wouldn't just jump out from aisle 7 and go, "Nice tits." But
No,
someone
because
could
I'd
easily
deck them in
drop
the
into
face.
right, someone could easily drop into chat and do that.
Oh,
You
they
know what I'm saying?
absolutely do. Uh,
Right? And so that's
literally, this
yeah.
week, someone was like, hey, do you mind if I unzip my pants in your face?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So it's like you have that barrier, this internet barrier, you know, where people feel like they can be macho man, but you know damn straight that person would not say that to your face in public.
Oh, we're so for those listening to the podcast, we're streaming this live on Twitch, and we've talked about Twitch with Jeremy, but while the stream is going on, there is a window with chat um that is going like real time. And Lord James Delaney, he just couldn't help himself.
Nice boobs, Kurt.
Um, yeah, exactly.
Thanks.
Um, he's not he's kidding though. If you look up Lord James Delaney, he's not being serious. Um, and it's weird too, like how thinking about relationships, because I've actually been in your chat when people have come in,
Mm-hmm.
and because, and this is sort of an interesting phenomenon that I talked about with Lopez about like the idea of like these shared communities. And I feel like there's a handful of you guys where, you know, like you and Lopez and Rick, and you know, it's like where people sort of, it's like almost like the thing I always used to say is in a, um, um like where you go hang out, there was like 4 or 5 bars, and everybody would just float around between all the different bars.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how I feel like all y'all's channels. Like I kind of know all the
So
players,
true. So
right?
true.
Like yeah.
If I'm bored one night and I know that somebody's online, I can just go hang on that channel. I'm like, I'm going to know at least 10 people here and I can just go chat with them. And you're
But
just chatting
also,
with the same people all the time.
but what's funny about it is then you sort of again build the relationships. And I don't know if my experience is a little different because I actually am friends with Lopez in real life,
Right.
right? Like hang out, go get beers, go to dinner, friends, right?
Yeah, I don't think I
So,
really have nobody that hangs out in my chat I know personally. So that
but
is a little different.
yeah, but the thing that's so I think I don't know if maybe I'm more vested in what he's well, I shouldn't say that. I am more vested in what he does because right, we have a relationship. Um, but it's almost weird how it spiders out because I got a long way around that. What I was getting at was like I've been in your chat before when some dickhead comes into chat and says something inappropriate, and all of a sudden I feel like I'm one of your brothers and I want to reach through the screen and like choke him by the throat. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's a weird sort of protective kind of my instant reaction is to be very protective.
Protective. Yeah, and communities get like that, man. Like there's a lot of people that are in my chat that are there all the time, and if something were to happen or if somebody says something, like one day somebody said something and I literally just watched chat rip them apart. I didn't have to say a thing and chat just attacked them. You know what I mean? Like everybody
Yeah.
gets protective like that, and it's great. It's nice to have that community and that family. It's I don't know. It's kind of humbling.
It's interesting. I mean, it does create, and I don't, and my experience is a little strange. When you think, I'd hesitate again, trying to find the right word. Um, maybe notoriety is the word. I mean, fame. You can't. I don't famous. I don't know if you can say famous. That's sort of relative, right? Like,
Right.
eh, but I do think notoriety, or there are potentially because you have elected to put content out there, right, for people to consume, there are people that know you and you don't know them. That to me is what I think. That's how in my mind, I think about what fame is. Like sometimes it's on a massive scale, right? If you're Brad Pitt, where like the entire
Yeah,
planet knows
I
who you are,
never thought of it that
and
way, honestly.
Brad Pitt knows like hit the 20 people that he's friends with.
Right.
Um, but you guys streaming 20, 30, 50 people, come online to watch you guys stream. And it's entirely possible that there are people that are in there that don't interact with chat very much, that absolutely know who you are. They know about you because they hear us all talking or whatever. And you may not only do you not know anything about them, you might not even know that they exist. Um, so there's an element of notoriety, right, that I think exists. And it's the same thing with my podcast. Like I've gotten notes from people that I do not know, right? Like that just was like, "Hey, really like this podcast," and I'm like, "Who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Like,
No,
why would you,
exactly.
why would you listen to it? Like, that's great, but it seems crazy that you would have listened to it, right?" Um, but it is a very bizarre because that. So I have some experience with that because earlier in my life, I was a musician and was in a band and we toured and played around, and that's the thing, you're performing, right? Like you're performing for people and you don't
Oh
know
yeah,
hardly.
there's going to be a lot of people who know you and you don't know them.
Yeah, you don't know them. And obviously my wife, I mean, that's her, I mean, she really does. I mean, she's on television, so like that's a whole different animal, and did a morning radio show in Atlanta for a long time. And uh that's even weirder with local, because strangely enough, she's been on CNN. She's been working at CNN for almost 30 years. And I think people know her more in Atlanta from doing radio in Atlanta than doing national news,
Yeah.
which is a little, I mean, I get it, right? Because that's a smaller, the
Smaller
ecosystem is,
community. Yeah, exactly.
but it is just very, very strange. And we dated and got engaged when she was doing, and got married when she was doing radio. And so, morning radio is a lot about the lives of the people hosting the show. And so effectively
More
our entire
personal. Yeah.
engagement, we covered there was lots of topics about leading up to the wedding, they talked about them, people called in, and like still to this day, 15 years later, like we could be in like a Kroger or a Publix or something, a grocery store, and people will walk up to us and be like, "Oh my gosh, when you guys got married," and we're like, "Who are you?
No,
Were you,
hello?
yeah,
Hey,
hello?"
you.
Like, "Were you there?" And they're like, "Oh no, we just heard about it on the radio." And I think I'm probably a little desensitized to it, right, to a degree, because it's been in my background. But with these platforms now, where you are basically curating a a a television channel. You know what I mean? Like,
Essentially.
I
Yeah.
mean, and it's weird.
Yeah. I put my life out there every time I stream. Like, people are free to ask me questions. We hang out. It's like hanging out with a bunch of friends. And you put your whole life out there. And I do try to keep, a lot of the details out. Obviously, like, I never give away location, and I rarely talk about my husband because, believe it or not, that's a huge stigma on chat. Like, a lot of guys I've had be like, ew, you're married, and then they leave or you never see them again, which good riddance,
Probably
but
better than they do.
yeah, exactly. But again, I try to keep some of my personal life out of streaming, but at the same time, like, I'm there for 8-9 hours a day. It's like a job, but fun.
Well, sure. And I mean, honestly, it could be for some people it is a job,
For
which
some
is
people,
also
it is a job. Yeah.
sort of a J-pod. Um, but uh, do you feel like um has you was it what was I I mean, what was it that made you go, I'm gonna go do this thing? Like, did you just see people doing it and thought that'd be fun? Did somebody prod you into it? Like, what was the
Yeah, that
genesis?
guy that I worked with, he was like, you should do this. You should do this. You could make money doing this. And I
So
guess
that
when
was
I
it. Like, I thought you were
first
just
got
in general.
into it, I was like, yeah, I can play video games. I can make money. And like, that was the idea, was getting into it at first. Money was the goal, right? Like, everybody thinks that they're going to get on, they're going to get famous, they're going to make money, and it's going to be great. It's not that. Like, if you are going to Twitch to make money, you miss the boat, my friend. I hate to say it, but it's long gone, and you're gonna drown before you get there. I even told chat the other day, I streamed for 10.5 hours and I made about 50 cents an hour. So, I mean, if that kind of money sounds good to you, great. Like, by all means, my friend. But I am 100% not in it for the money anymore. It's just kind of, it's that interaction. And again, like I said, I came from a really small town and I've moved like 4 or 5 times in the last 9 years. So for me, having this kind of interaction with other people is kind of my escape. I try not to mix business and pleasure. And by that, I mean, I don't really hang out with people that I work with. I try to keep that business life and home life separate. So to have this kind of outlet to talk to people and meet friends and all of that is really nice. And I mean, I've met people that I've played video games with, and people think I'm crazy, but it's like, no, 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 you don't understand. Like, I know this person. I've been, playing games with them for a couple of years. And they're like, that's not knowing somebody. I'm like, you don't understand. And I think it's a big thing. When I explain to people what I do, I pretty much just tell them now that I broadcast. I'm like, I just broadcast, like, computer stuff. I don't tell them like, oh, I play video games online to people. People think it's weird and they look at me weird when I say that.
I do think though it is a lot about age and what people are comfortable with though, right? I mean, because it's i- i- older generations, especially, like even people that are around my age, they don't have any experience with it, and so it seems
They don't get
strange
it. I've had
to
to
them.
explain it to my mom, and she, I don't think, really gets it. She's like, "Oh, are you doing that stream thing?" Yeah, mom, I'm doing the stream thing. I
Yeah, and
mean,
I mean, and I even said it, even in my own mind, sometimes it seems weird, but not. But like I talked about when I podcasted with Lopez um about meeting Rick Loves Bacon. Rick Loves Bacon is another streamer that's kind of in our, in the kind of circle of,
circle
yeah,
in our
in the
bars.
circle. That's right. And uh I just he's you know that's what I meant earlier. Like I've interacted with Rick enough in other people's streams, in his stream. When he said he was coming to Atlanta for DreamHack, I was like, I can't wait to meet that dude. And it was everything I expected and more. You know what I mean? Like he's just such a sweetheart, and it's funny, like the story we told, I walked into the bar where we were all meeting, and like I was on one end, it was like a really terrible like 80s rom-com. Like I saw him.
Where you like run through the field and you're like getting
No,
ready
like,
to just like hug each other.
but no, that's what happened. Like I pushed through the crowd and I didn't say shit. I just wrapped my arms around him.
Yeah.
Like, and it just is so, I mean, it's just no, a personal stranger, not a stranger, but no one I'd ever personally met in live before. And it's, it just was, and it wasn't weird. It was like we had the best time. You know what I mean? But then when I tell the story, I was like, okay, I guess probably if you're not familiar with the universe and how it all works, like, yeah, I could see where maybe you think that's weird.
Yeah.
But fortunately, it's totally not. And also, I'm a person that really doesn't care what other people think, so it doesn't really matter.
It's weird too coming from like the viewer side too, right? Cuz you're the one who's interacting with the streamer. So anything you say to them, like you get their personality by talking to them. Like you hear how I speak, and that kind of gives you an idea of my demeanor or how I act and respond to things. So when you finally get around to meeting these people, it's like it's no different. It's so weird. It's so hard to explain. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like they're exactly how you thought they were going to be.
Yeah.
And it's comfortable and it's fun and it's such a great world we live in, right? Like you can meet people online, and I mean, obviously with caution, you don't want to get like cut up in somebody's basement or something, but
I feel like we live in a very Spider-Man time in history right now. Like with great power comes great responsibility.
yes. Yes.
Um, you
Absolutely.
know, the internet is a unbelievable tool that has the power to do so much good and yet so much evil all at the same time.
I feel like it does more evil than good, but there's that
It
yin and that yang still.
Yeah, it probably does. I mean, but, it's an interest and again, culturally for me, it's a strange thing because, like, the internet didn't really show up uh, in a common use scenario until I was in college. Like, email became a thing while I was a college student. Like, when I took computer science as a freshman, like, 125, which was, like, the first year course, it was all DOS, like, C prompt
Oh
stuff.
man.
That's how old I am. Um, but, so, eh, it's even for me, like, in my age people, a relatively new, conceptually new. It certainly wasn't something we had as kids, and there's so much information. I mean, that's sort of the trick is there's so much information available, which is unbelievable. But,
I think it's
um
terrible.
You do?
Yeah, we just have and I was talking to somebody the other day about this. So I was at work, and this mom comes in with her kid, right? And the kid's running around and she just wants him to sit down. And he was probably like 5 or 6, you know? And all she does is hands him the phone or a tablet. And yeah, it's great that we have the internet and all of this like endless knowledge at our fingertips. But what we do with it is not what we should be doing with it. You know what I mean? like getting your kid to sit down and shut up by playing on a tablet until you're done doing what you're doing. Like, we didn't have that, right? Like, I remember constantly being bored with my mom shopping, you know, in the clothing aisle. Like, I hated going to the clothing aisle. I was like, my most dreaded moment about going to the store with my mom was the clothing aisle. And I would just hide in like clothes racks. And my mom later told me, she was like, I would lose you all the time and I couldn't figure out where you'd go. And she's like, I thought I was a horrible mother, but you were just hiding in the clothes racks all the time. But like, kids being able to find ways to entertain themselves when they're bored is important. Like, giving them a tablet or a phone or something to entertain their mind isn't teaching them good. I don't know. How do you explain that? Just, kids need to be bored sometimes, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it becomes, yeah, I mean, you've got to find, well, I think what you're driving at is that it creates a circumstance where they're forced to use their creativity and their imagination to entertain themselves instead of it all just being presented to them with flashy lights and graphics.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, and that sort of thing. So, and again, we don't have children, so this is also weird
Neither
territory.
do I, you know, and if I was a mom with a screaming child in the store, I'd probably throw a phone at him to get him to shut up too, you know, like, all right, fuck, shut up, okay? But at the same time, like, these are the children you're teaching. You're not teaching people that can sit still and be patient. Like, I notice with younger people now that they need it now. You know what I mean?
Well, I also, again, sorry for parents out there, and I'm going to speak totally out of turn, not having kids, but I also too think like we've got these kids all hopped up on drugs. They're diagnosed with these, you know, these emotional, you know, and psychological conditions that wasn't a thing when I was a kid. And again, I'm not even saying that I know there are kids that legitimately have issues, right, that need to get dealt with. But on the flip side, I know for a fact, and I don't want to say where, because some of those people, you know people that are listening to this, but like I know for a fact there are people that the kids are just being normal kids and parents don't want to deal with it. And so they medicate them. And
Yeah.
it's just, which is just terrible. But also the other thing too is and if you're from a rural place like me, you know, and my wife can't even wrap her head around this. I mean, you know, again, I'm from the country in Georgia, and she's a Jew from Chicago. Um, eh, I got my first 22 rifle when I was 6, 7 years old.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I mean, we lived on, you know, and that's the thing is like now I think people equate land to money, but like where I grew up, there was land in spades. It didn't cost anything, right? We lived in a little shitty house like my grandfather built on 4, 5, 6 acres, which people that live in cities are like 5 acres. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. Like, where land, you know, yeah, I can still go to where I grew up and you can buy an acre of land for like $2,500, which most people are like, there's no way. Cause you know, you come to Atlanta and like 1 acre of land is like $150,000 or $500,000, depending on where it is. And, so land was rife, but you know, you could just go run around the woods. I wasn't worried about shooting somebody I mean, I only had the thing I worry about doing was hurting myself. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't going to hurt anyone else. But nowadays, like I think if somebody found out that we had kids and I gave my 6-year-old a rifle, they'd call damn defects on me.
Oh, probably. Absolutely. And I mean, when I was young, so we kind of touched on this a little bit before the stream, but like I literally grew up in the middle of the woods. And I really mean that. Like, it was just like a circle carved out in the middle of a forest. Like, imagine like the shape of a lollipop, and the stick is the driveway, and then the top of the lollipop is like where the house was. And we lived in the woods, and we did nothing but go outside and push down dead trees and play in the creek or go fishing. Or my dad was really big on hunting. Like, we were by no means a wealthy family. We ate a lot of what my dad hunted. So, I mean, I grew up with a gun leaning up against the back door. And one time I like watched him get up to like go to the kitchen to like get something to eat or drink. And he like walks past the back door, sees a deer, like double takes, goes and grabs the gun, shoots it, puts it down, and he's like, I'll be back in a couple hours. And he just goes out and gets dinner. Like, it sounds redneck, and it is, but that's how it was. And I had a four-wheeler when I was really young. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm talking like 11 or 12. I was riding my own four-wheeler around. Like, it's a different world now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it totally is. But again, I think to your point, it's like, how far does the pendulum swing? Because I feel like, is it a good idea? I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's a problem with a 7-year-old having a gun, like a reasonable gun in the right circumstances. But
Right.
again, I don't think it's ubiquitous either. Like, I wouldn't say universally, it's like, sure, let's, like, that's a great idea. Let's, get
Yeah, but
Red
I mean,
Ryder.
we were taught, like, you don't play with a gun that's hanging out by the back door. You know what I mean? Like, we're not just going to get up and shoot somebody with it, you know?
Yeah,
Like, this
absolutely.
is meant for hunting, and this is what you do with it.
Yeah, but like, I mean, but I was out, again, case in point, no phone. I was out in the, I was building a fort or,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like throwing, climbing trees, and it all
Literally
sounds,
throwing rocks at
yeah,
trees, pushing
yeah.
down dead trees, looking for salamanders, or who knows, man? Like, who knows what I was even doing? But like, we had a lot of property too. We probably had like 20, 30 acres.
Yeah.
And I would just ride the four-wheeler around, make my own trails. Was it smart for like a 14-year-old going off for a few hours on a four-wheeler by herself making trails? Probably not, but there I was.
I didn't, yeah, I had a go-kart, not a four-wheeler, but same. Like,
Oh,
and
those were
driving like
fancy.
30 miles an hour between like trees, you easily could have just face planted into one of those things and didn't. Wait a second. So why do I look? Mod Curb says he thinks looks like I'm wearing makeup.
No. No.
Mod, you clearly have never seen me in makeup if you think that's what this looks like. So
on Sean's next show. No, I'm kidding.
yeah. Now he's surprised that I can see chat. Like, do you think don't know how to work a computer, Mod? Like, you've never done this before, you dick. Um so what made you decide to get away from food?
Oh God. Have you ever worked in a kitchen?
Yeah, well, no. I mean, I've been a server. I never worked in a kitchen, but I've worked in a restaurant.
Well, I
It's
mean,
like
that's
it's
close
the
enough.
hardest work I've ever done, to be
Yeah.
honest.
So, the work was good, kind of. Yes and no. Some days I would work like 16 hours, which was a lot for me in the long run. And I think that's probably looking back, is probably what contributed to some of my health problems that I deal with now. Like, I have a really sensitive stomach now, and I think a lot of that was because when you're in a kitchen, man, you don't eat for 12 hours or whatever. So I was a pastry chef too.
Ironically.
So I always had like chocolate. Yeah, right. So weird. So I always had like chocolate on my station, or I had to do the owner wanted chocolate desserts on the menu. So I always had chocolate around, and I would eat a lot of chocolate, and apparently that's really bad for your stomach. So I actually ended up developing esophagitis when I was like 21 or 22. And the doctor was like, yeah, I've never seen it this bad in a kid your age. Like, usually it's somebody like 40s and 50s, and they're alcoholics and they smoke. And it was kind of like an eye opener for me. Like, wow, I'm just not taking care of myself. And then one day I was talking with my chef, and he asked, what do you want to do, with your life or whatever? I told him, I love cooking. Like, cooking has always been a really big part of my life. My dad cooked for the family, and my grandma was a really big baker. Like, I always spent a lot of time with my grandma baking. She taught me how to do a lot. And I'm a self-taught chef, actually. I did like a little bit of culinary school in high school, but it's not like a real, degree in culinary. But I told him, I want to do this and I want to do that. And he's like, do you think, you can do that here? And I was like, yeah, I love you guys and I like working here. He's like, that's not what I asked you. And I was like, okay. And he's like, have you learned everything you think that you could learn here? And I was like, well, no. he's like, well, what if I tell you your job's not available next summer? He's like, then what would you do? And I'm like, I guess I would, maybe move and, find someplace else. And he's like, well, your job's not available next summer. So I was like, well, shit. So I think he kind of saw some potential in me, and he just knew that it was never going to amount to anything where I was. And he's probably right. So it kind of worked out because the roommate that I had at the time was kind of like, oh, by the way, I'm moving out at the end of the month. And I was like, oh, shit. So not only was I not going to have a job next summer, I didn't have a roommate. And the guy that I just started dating was like, yeah, I'll move to the next city with you. And I was like, oh, okay. And I've only known him for like 4 months, so I was like really paranoid about that. But then I got a job as a baker, and that was a lot of fun. I really liked that. It was kind of like in this like hippie, all natural leavened place. It was like this whole new world, right? I was with all these like cool hipster people. And then that was fun for a while, but it was bought out by this like blue collar guy that just wanted money, 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 money. And he changed everything, and I didn't like it. And then my husband got a job, which required us to move again. So we moved, and I had a lot of experience in retail. And that was the easiest job I could find when we moved. So I did that, and I just never went back to cooking.
But
so
you
I
still
kind
enjoy
of just fell out of it, I guess.
But you still enjoy cooking, right?
I love cooking, and I do cooking streams sometime even. I've always kind of had like this like dream of having your own cooking show, like baking with Kerrty, or who knows, but like it was always kind of in my head that I always wanted to be really good at cooking, and it just kind of fell through. Life happens, and you get kind of pulled in one direction, and then you get pulled in another direction. And then being in a kitchen is really hard too. Anybody that's in the food service industry knows that, like, before all these laws were passed where jobs have to provide you health insurance, no kitchen I was ever in ever provided health insurance. Like, there's no insurance, especially in like little mom and pop shops. Like, it was hard. I never had insurance. I never had, benefits of any kind. And it's hard to get that in a kitchen. So, and again, it's hard being a woman in a kitchen, especially being a pastry chef. Most restaurants only have like 1 or 2 or 3 people doing pastries. So it's a very niche position. So for me to find that position in a new place that's already been established, it's hard.
Yeah, I think you should. Yeah, I mean, the cooking show stuff is great. I think I don't know that I've ever caught a cooking stream, but that's something I would for sure watch. One of the interesting total side note, like that was when I was in the hospital. So the nature of what was wrong with me, I actually couldn't eat any food for, I guess, from July of 20. I got sick on July 14th, 2018, and the next time I ate solid food like by mouth was January or February of 2019.
Oh my God.
So it was probably 7 months, but I couldn't eat 6, 7 months. And but the entire time I was in the hospital, I just watched wall to wall food. And it's the weirdest thing because the doctors were like, it's the strangest phenomenon. This is it. It's almost universal. Like that's what people do, but it didn't make you hungry. It didn't, because you sort of are dealing with what you're dealing with and you understand the reality of it. And I don't know if it's maybe hitting those triggers in your brain, or whatever, or help because you can't, whatever. But now I'm such a junkie. Like I watch the Food Network.
I love Food Network
all the time. But I think you would be really good at that. If you get a chance, you should check out one of my podcasts. I can't remember which episode, but a really, really good friend of mine. If you ever want me to introduce you to, but his name's Chadwick Boyd. And he started a company in Atlanta that he's relocated to New York. And he started out as an actor. Like he wasn't I think he was a named part, but not anyone you would remember, but he was in Dead Poet Society and he did some other movies. And but then he got really into food, and he started a food like I mean, he's a sort of a chef, and he does television shows, and he's doing a baking show on the Hallmark Channel, and that's what he did. Like he
That's
sort of just
awesome.
repositioned himself, and now he's a sort of food and lifestyle expert, and he does TV, and he's doing these things now, which is really cool, called Real Food, where if you go in to watch a movie at the movie theater, they produce like real quick, like 2 to 5 minute cooking segments that go on while you're before the previews come up, like when you're sitting in movie theaters. Um, but anyway, he's just a great guy, and a similar story, right? Like he just, and again, not a ton of formal training. I think now over time he goes and has done classwork, but it's not like
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
he didn't go to CIA or Cordon Bleu or you know what I mean, like any of that. Like he
Yeah.
just was self-taught, and then was around, worked in restaurants and was around people that knew what they were doing. And he's a good guy, but I would encourage you to I mean, I think that's awesome. Like I would. Oh, Maud asked, "How do you go 7 months without eating?" Well, I didn't eat by mouth, so I had a they have a tube not to get too graphic, but basically they put a tube in your stomach, and you know, you hang a bag, and it dumps it right into your small
Oh, nom
intestine.
nom nom nom.
Yeah, like so, because you can't they sort of take your stomach out of the equation, because at that point at that point it's not about eating, it's just about giving you
Life.
the stuff you need to keep you from dying, which is how I went from 6'4", 240 pounds, to the day I walked out of the hospital, I was 6'4", 158 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
So, which is crazy. And now I'm back up to like 180, and trying to get back up to like 210. But yeah, I don't advise it. If you want to lose weight, there are better ways. I wouldn't,
Not that you did it by choice or anything, but
yeah, but I wouldn't suggest going that route. It's not, it's not super fun. Um, the other thing that I think that's really interesting, because I don't know much about this, I'm making some assumptions because of things I've seen and little comments, but so you're really into cosplay, right?
I used to be.
So I feel like that's maybe similar in a sense that um that's very communal, right? Like people that like we have this con here called Dragon Con in
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta,
Yeah.
and my friends that are into that, like they count, like honestly, like 5 minutes after it's over, they're counting that shit down for next year. Like they cannot wait.
So that's like a whole different beast is cosplay, right? So convention life is so much different. Like being online and being on Twitch is one thing where I go live when I want, I talk to who I want, I do this, I do that, it's fine. But when you go to conventions, you are in front of these people. Like you are face to face with these interactions. Doesn't matter how awkward it is, you're face to face with these people. And I mean, it's fun. I've met a lot of really cool people, and I've met a lot of really weird people. Sometimes you meet those people that you see in movies that you're like, this is so unrealistic. These people don't exist. They exist. They really exist. But that was an interesting adventure, I guess. An old friend of mine. She's actually more of like a friend of the family. So it was like my mom's best friend, her daughter. We used to go to like Christmas parties with them, and that's how I knew her. But she's much older than me. I think she's like, I guess I shouldn't say much. She's like 6 years older than me. So, she was too old to like hang out with me, until I became an adult. But she just randomly got a hold of me, and she was like, hey, take this time off work. And I swear to God, I didn't talk to her for like 10 years. And I was like, okay, sweet. What are we doing? And she was like, oh, we're going to go to Chicago and we're going to go to C2E2. And I was like, okay, sweet. So I just did it. And she's like, so I guess she heard about cosplay before I did, obviously, because she was like, I'm going to dress up, and I'm going to dress up as this. And she's a big gamer too. She did a lot of like WoW, which I was never like really into, but she played a lot of games on like Xbox and stuff. And we decided to go to a convention together and dress up. And that was really our first experience with cosplay. And as soon as we walked in the door, we were like bombarded with all of these people with their like cameras wanting to take pictures with us. And it was this like crazy, surreal experience of, talk about being famous, right? Like, no regular person has ever had that many people come up to them and just stop them and want to take pictures with them. It's really weird. And I remember just getting this huge anxiety all of a sudden that all of these people were around me and wanting to take my picture. And after that, though, so it was 3 days of that. And it was a lot of fun. And then after that, we were like, wow, that was great. What's next? It was kind of this like rush, right? So we started planning costumes together. We're like, okay, well, we did like this femme Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy, like female versions of these characters. And we went to a convention like that. And then she was really into Silent Hill, and I was too. That was one of the first PlayStation games I ever played. I think I was like 12. It was really scary, and, you know, like, you thought the graphics were amazing, and it was terrifying, and I loved it. So she decided to go as Pyramid Head, and I was one of the nurses, and we decided to go to C2E2 with that. And I swear to God, it took us 4 hours to even get into the convention because we couldn't move. So many people were trying to take pictures with us, and it was a lot of fun, but it's expensive, man.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so expensive, and it's so time consuming. And I think that was kind of where I fell out. I ran out of space. I ran out of time. I ran out of money. And that's like another thing, like, you don't make money off of cosplay, right? And I mean, now there's new outlets, right? There's Patreon, where people can like help support you, which I never got into. Like, that was past me at that point. I did have a Twitter, though, and actually only recently did I switch over my Instagram and my Twitter to Kerrty Live rather than Kerrty Cosplays, because I've just kind of switched over to the Twitch thing rather than the cosplay thing.
Yeah, that one's interesting. Like, I have so many friends that do it. It's funny. Like, I despise Halloween. It's like my least favorite holiday ever.
You're a monster.
I know, I get it. And it drives my wife crazy because she's the opposite. Like, she wants to just go full bore, right? Like, the whole,
Yeah.
and I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I'm lazy. I don't know if it's because I hate kids. It's probably some combination of all that.
Oh my.
I shouldn't say I hate kids. I don't like a lot of kids.
Nope. Cat's out of the bag.
Yeah. Mostly because I feel like the parents have, set them up to fail. But I don't know. I mean, but like, I know people that like that is, I mean, they do not mess around. Like, I know I can start to see like the social media posts about like 6 months out when the costume planning starts.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that has to come down to like, I mean, come on. When you were younger, there was a character that you watched on TV, and you know what I'm talking about. There's that movie you've seen 100 times, and there was that one character that you're like, man, I wish I could be them. Or you pretended to be them on the playground, or when you were hanging out at home by yourself, you were pretending to be this character. And I think that's a lot where it comes down to, is a lot of these people get really empowered by dressing up as these people. So I did, and this one was, again, I sucked at cosplay, man. I was so bad at it. I just never finished my costumes on time. And then once the convention was over, I never went back to it. I have the same problem with video games. I'll like start a video game and I just never finish it. It's a huge issue for me. I have like a shelf of shame of like video games I've never finished. And now my Steam list is just, a list of shame of all of these games that I never finish. But cosplay was kind of the same thing for me. I would have this idea for a costume, and one of my favorite movies to this day is The Fifth Element, and Lilu from The Fifth Element was like this badass, strong woman, and I always just wanted to be her, right? So I decided, I got this bright idea, like, I'm going to be Lilu from The Fifth Element, and I did it, and it was like, it was so much fun. When you become these characters, you meet these other people that when you see them at these conventions, it's not like, hey, Carrie, it's hey, Lilu. You know, like they call you out by your character's name, or they'll interact with you based on your character. And it's this nerdum, it's this fandom, it's a life to them. I don't know. It's so hard to explain. And I think kind of like the same thing comes down to Halloween. It's not about like mummies and werewolves and Dracula, you know, it's your fandom. Like, who do you want to be for that one night when you don't have to be yourself?
Multipass. The sci-fi darling Mila Jovovich as Lilu, because she was also Jill Valentine, wasn't she, in the Resident Evil movies?
Yes. Yep.
That was my first game. You mentioned your first Sony PlayStation game. That was college for me. Like, we got the PlayStation in our apartment in college, and I remember that got the first Resident Evil, and I'll never forget.
I think Crash Bandicoot was probably the first for me.
Every time you open it up, RE, it was the opening scene with the helicopter coming in, like
yeah.
And that sound, I still, if I hear a helicopter sound, it makes
Your, like,
me think
ears perk up.
Yeah, the opening of RE1. Yeah, I'm the opposite on games. I'm a completionist. So
I am now. I'm an
I'm
achievement
on the
whore.
other side now. Yeah, me too. But
like, I gotta finish it.
Yeah, to the point of it being like a problem. Like when I get, because I also really love RPGs and those sorts of games, and so
Yeah,
it's
me
like
too.
the ones that have 7,500 of these little side missions and
yeah.
things, and I'm running around like I love the Assassin's Creed series, and it's like all the
Oh,
little
God.
chests, you know, the little the animus pieces, you
Yep.
know, and all that stuff. Like, I just will, for weeks, like I won't do anything except for running around on buildings trying to find like the animus pieces.
And I just did that on the Switch with Link's Awakening. You have to find these 50 secret seashells. And I can't stop. I'm at like 38 of them, and I can't freaking beat the game. I'm literally at the end of the game. I just have to finish it, but I can't because I still got 12 more stupid seashells I gotta find.
So how do you have a process for like deciding like what games you want to stream versus what games you just are going to play?
Yes and no. I mean, so this is where Twitch kind of has that evil, right? Where you want to have viewers, and you want to have that viewership, and you want the people that are watching you to like what they're watching, because then they come and they hang out, right? So a lot of times when I play these off the wall indie games, you just don't have people interested in it. So that's kind of where I come down to, like, I end up playing a lot of the same games, or games that have unlimited hours available to them, like, you know, Dead by Daylight or Hunt Showdown. Those are games that you can play nonstop forever, and you're never going to run out of things to do, right? So, but if I were to switch over and go to another game, you lose all that viewership, and that's really hard for a small streamer. If you were a large streamer, it wouldn't matter. You could do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But if there's a game that I really want to play, like right now I've got a few games on my radar. Biomutant, I've been waiting for that to come out for a long time, and The Last of Us 2. Those are two games that I just, like, they're on my mind, and I can't stop thinking about them, and I can't wait to play them. And when they do come out, that's all I'm going to play. And I don't care who's there to watch me. I'm going to be there. But I mean, if a viewer purchases a game for me and they're like, hey, I got this game for you, I think you're really going to like it, I'm going to play that on stream. Just because they took the time and the effort to think about me, and they want to see me play it. So I'm going to do it. I don't know.
I'm really trying to be better, because I definitely have always sort of been the AAA title guy. You know, like I would just play those big AAA type releases.
And you do that for a reason, because some of those indie games are.
But I'm trying to be better about because before it was just like I'd only play triple A's, not because I was taking some stand. I just wouldn't take the time to try to sit. Like I know there are non triple A games out there I would like.
Yeah.
It's just committing the the time into saying, well, would I like this or not? You know what I mean? And or would I dig in? And I also don't play on PC, which Lopez makes fun of me about relentlessly.
I didn't have a PC until 5 years ago. I mean, I had a PC, but like it was like a laptop, right? It couldn't do anything. I was like strictly a console gamer.
Yeah, and it's stupid considering what I do for a living because like I have access to everything to build like the most stupid rig of all time,
Right.
right? Like I could have an insane rig, right? I worry about the status of my marriage if I put in a rig because um I would just be up here all the time, you know?
Yeah.
And at least like the Xbox is now on like our main TV, right? So when we're gonna watch, like I don't have a choice, right? It's
So
if
your
it's
wife's not a gamer at all.
well, no, because of, again, she didn't grow up with games.
Okay. But I thought maybe because she was. Oh no. I think I lost him. Hold on. There we go. Ta-da. Technology is so good.
It is good.
I know.
I can't even remember what I was talking about.
Yeah, me either.
Um, oh, about my wife. And
Oh
about
yeah, she's not a gamer.
yeah. So it's interesting because, um, you know, she doesn't do any console and PC, but now over time, like we're also both multitask. Like if we watch a lot of TV, that's kind of one of the things we do. We have shows we watch together, and um, I always have like my laptop in my lap, and over the last like 5 years, now like it started with like I think Words with Friends, and then it morphed into
Best
like
Fiends.
Candy Crush, yeah, Best Fiends, and now she's got all these games on her iPad, and then she's just like, it's literally like almost a sitcom skit where she's just like, "I'm not a gamer, you're the gamer," while she's swiping like a crazy person on her iPad. You know what I mean? Like playing
Yeah.
some game, or like now her big thing is like puzzles, like the old school like puzzles, like you know how you
I
dump the
love
puzzle,
puzzles.
but digital. You know, it's on the iPad, so
Oh
it's
God.
the old school
No,
piece,
not the
and
same.
she drags them around. She's got a little pen, you know, that she uses, and she likes to put puzzles together, but on the thing. And I'm like, you're gaming,
Yeah.
albeit at a very minor league level. You
Right, but
are,
it's still a game. I mean, it goes back to some of the original games that what Windows came out with was like Solitaire, Minesweeper. I mean,
yeah, of
there's
course.
still games.
So, not the Wolverine ask a question, and since we asked and then we got back, I want to say, if, I'm assuming this was at me, since Kerrty has a PC. If you get a PC, what would be the first game you'd play that you can't on console? Um, that's the thing is I don't know for me if I got a PC, it wouldn't be about accessing games that I can't get to on console. It'd be about being able to play games with people.
Yeah,
Like
with your
like
friends.
yeah, like I would love to play Hunt or DVD or something with you guys. You know what I mean? Like that would be
So much fun.
that's why I would do it.
Dude,
It
just
would
do it.
totally not be
Just do
about
it.
getting it to into games that whatever. Although it would be because honestly, if I had to pick a game that if I was a streamer, I would probably be a PUBG streamer.
But you could do
Um,
your podcast live too.
I
Like
totally
what
could.
we're doing right now, you could do that live.
Yeah, yeah. But like I played a ton of PUBG, and I mean I still play a fair amount. I've backed off some, but
Some.
you know, because I'm doing it. Like I actually started playing Hunt on console, and it's really really hard.
It's
But
so good though.
just because mouse and keyboard, like controller FPS is
It is a
hard.
different world and it's one you have to get used to. And when I started streaming, it was on console. I streamed right from the PlayStation camera. Like I bought the PlayStation camera and used that. And then same thing with the Xbox. I used the Kinect camera and I would use that to stream. Was it good? No, it wasn't good. It didn't look good at all. But there I was, and I was doing it. And that's actually how I built my original following. And then I decided, okay, well, I'm going to get a gaming PC so that I can see chat on the side, you know? And then I just kind of started building from there. Like, okay, well, now that I can see chat, I want to do this. And then it just built and built. And then eventually I was like, you know what? I got to get a PC. And when I finally bit the bullet and did it, I've never looked back.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and tell you, it's entirely possible too that Diablo 4 might be the game that gets me off the schneid.
Ooh, you guys heard it here.
We're a little bit ways away. Like, I'm not totally convinced that Blizzard will get that done by next year, but that I loved those games.
It's different though. Mouse and keyboard took me a while to get used to.
But I would like to see how good I am at FPS with mouse and keyboard, just because I don't know. You know what I mean?
You'll be better.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm actually pretty decent pretty decent controller FPS player.
Yeah, I was too. Like, I loved Gears of War, man. Like, that was the one thing that got me onto Xbox. I never wanted an Xbox. I was always a Sony girl. But Gears of War looked so good, right? So I've played every single Gears of War, and it was so good. And I was actually really good at it. But the most recent Gears of War, right? Now Windows has come out, or Microsoft has come out with the cross-platform situation. You can play it on PC, and you're like, oh God, I'm a fucking legend. You know? Like...
Yeah, I mean, a great example. I mean, like when I'm playing, you know, even like now with Xbox, like when I play Hunt, I mean, I've got it set to where it won't match me with keyboard mouse players, like, because I'll just get wrecked.
Oh yeah, you know what I mean? Totally. In a second too.
Yeah,
you won't even have time to think about it. You'll be like, what's that sound over? Dead.
So, but I just have always, because of what I do for a living, like I've always just been in the Microsoft world, which is why I ended up gravitating towards Xbox. And then now it's just like I've got an XB1 and I have a PlayStation 4. I just don't want to pay for the live subscription because I pay for Xbox Live.
Yeah.
So like Last of Us 2, I will 100% play.
Absolutely. Right? You have to.
But that'll probably be the only game I'll fire up on my PS4 for, you know, a year, right?
So I find it interesting though. You said your wife doesn't play. So like, does it bother her when you're playing games a lot, or does she just kind of do her own thing? Like, does she nag you? Like, is she like, oh God, are you gonna be done playing these games soon? Or
I feel like after having been married for 14 years, that I kind of now have a pretty good read on right, like when it's okay. So, and I will say too that like, so she travels a lot, as you might imagine, for her job. Like, she was just in New York this past week doing a story on this horse trainer up there at Belmont, where they run like the Belmont Stakes. And, you know, she was in Canada. She's going to Sweden in a few months. Like, she's all over the place. So, to be quite honest, like she'll generally say, like, we'll get home from work, we'll chat it up about our day, we'll make some food. And then usually she'll be like, hey, do you want to watch something? You know what I mean? And 9 times out of 10, or probably 98 times out of 100, the answer, I'll always say yes, because I want to hang out with her. Right. So, right. But the times when it doesn't lend itself are also because of what she does. She does a lot of charity work, and like she MCs and hosts a lot of charity events. So I just, and between that and her travel, like there's lots of nights
where you have time to do it.
Yeah. So she's just gone. Right. Like, so when and I'll just come home from work, feed the dogs, you know, and fire it up, you know, or these days, believe it or not, like it sounds, oh yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn's the shit.
So good.
So, I want him to do another one of those. Like, what's going on? So, but it's funny now, like I game less because I'm hanging out with you idiots. Like I just put my PC in my lap and I'm bouncing around people's Twitch channels.
It's crazy, isn't it?
You know what I mean? Instead of playing, because for me, like
It's
And
consuming though, because but oh God, like we could just circle around this all night. You know these people and you want to hang out with them. Like I have my morning ritual, man. I get up in the morning, I have my iPad when I get ready for work, and I watch the same people every
yeah,
morning. When I get home, I know who's gonna be on. I watch the same people. Like it's this weird routine, kind of like Lopez. Like I know where he is every Tuesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever. Like I know where he's gonna be.
yeah, and also I think there's eh, I don't know. It's hard. To me, it's sort of like when I was single in my 20s, it was always like not married, no girlfriend, whatever. Or even when I had a girlfriend, it was like get off work, starting from about Wednesday on, go up to the local bar you hang. And I don't want to come draw the bar reference again, but I could not even have any other friends going out. If I went to my hangout, I knew the bartender, I knew,
Yep.
people are going to be there, and
Yep.
I'd go up, I'd have a few pops, then go home.
You knew what to
Right.
expect. Yep.
And like that to me now, I feel like that's cause I'm old as fuck. Like I'm not going out. So like,
And I'm a
I'm not,
homebody too, man. Like when I'm home, I'm home. Like once I
yeah.
hit that door and my shoes come off, I'm not going back out.
Yeah. So I feel
Like
like
it's gonna
that
take a lot to drag me back out.
yeah, I feel like that kind of scratches that itch. You know what I mean? Like that whole, like,
You get that social interaction without having to leave the comfort of your home.
yeah. And also too, though, I don't have a lot of friends that are gamers on console, mostly because a lot of my IRL friends, that are my age, right? 45, they've all got like a slew of like 12 to 17-year olds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, you know, it, it's like if I do have a moment where I'm not going to soccer practice or going to band practice or taking them to, to karate or doing whatever, like I'm going to hang out with my wife or husband, or I'm just going to chill. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The last thing I'm going
Yeah.
to do is jump on and play a game. And to me, like, I don't, much like I said with the PC, like, I'm not a huge fan of, so like I think back again at the end of like in the heyday when I was playing tons of COD, there were like 7 or 8 of my buddies. You knew you could always get a 4-man squad together, like no matter what.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like that was our time to hang. Like we were playing a game, but really what we were doing was hanging out. The game was just sort of a vehicle, right? For
Yeah,
us to all be connected
sit
and
around
talk
and talk. Yeah.
bullshit. Yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
what Twitch is. I honestly, sometimes I just play a game. Like Dead by Daylight for me is that mindless game that I just play, but I'm watching chat 90% of the time. Like it's that vehicle where I'm just here to chat with you or talk with you. And I've just happened to have a game going on in the background.
But it also lends itself to you getting uh really frustrated, making strange noises,
Yelling at people,
having people scare the shit out of you,
having people scare me. Right.
telling people to eat a dick. Yeah, stuff like
I've
that.
never said that.
Whatever. You made it out of that hatch by like a
The,
half a
the
second.
Twitch clips are where the gold is, right? Like that's where the gold is. And everybody has a good time. But like I asked you those questions about your wife because I know a lot of my guy friends, like they like if I'm bored and I'm at home, so my husband doesn't get home from work until usually a little bit later, but I'll usually, get online for a few hours, and my initial thought when I do that is I'm just going to see who's online and who's playing what. Sometimes you bug these friends and they're like, "Oh no, the wife is nagging me," or like I have some friends that like their wives, like I can just hear them in the other room just yelling at them because they're playing video games. And I think that's hard too, because if you have somebody who doesn't like video games or doesn't understand why you play video games, it's hard to be in a relationship with somebody like that sometimes because it creates that animosity.
Well, because again, I think, and again, perhaps at this point, it's just because I'm very experienced at being married.
Well, but you have free times too. Like when you have that time available to play, like when it's appropriate.
Yeah, but that's like, but again, to me, like it's not just about video game. Like at that point, it's about with your partner. like understanding what your relationship allows for. So I feel like I'm also very lucky in a sense that my wife, when we got married, we were both already in our 30s and we'd never been married before. So we when we got married, we both were single for our entire 20s and did the whole single thing and we're totally gassed on that. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
then it was just like we were looking to settle down. We met each other. Um, and we're both like hyper independent. Like, so again, she's very successful in her career. We don't have children. Um, there's stuff she likes to do, and we're both very comfortable with not being on top of each other when we're in the house together.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
I
That's
know
healthy.
people that are not like that, right? Like I know I have buddies where it's like if they're home and they're not, you know what I mean? Like, and again, it works for them, it would not work for us. Because a great example, so Holly's air quotes video games, Holly makes jewelry and she sells it. So, like behind where I'm sitting right now, which you probably can't see in this other back corner is a separate desk where her desk is, and she's got all of this stuff, like, all
Jewelry
her
stuff.
tools
Yeah.
and chain and the jewels and the things, and I don't know, but that's what she does. We have a 40-inch TV. She puts on some terrible British TV show, which is what she'll watch, fucking Downton Abbey or The Crown or some nonsense like that, and she'll watch TV shows and make jewelry, and I'm downstairs, getting ass wrecked and hunt, and that's how it works for us. You know what I mean? Like it totally works for us.
No, that's good. But I mean, some people don't. Some people don't have that, and I pity those poor bastards.
Yeah, I mean, I mean,
Find you a wife that doesn't yell at you when you play video games. You know.
yeah, and yeah, for sure. And find you a I mean, again, I think people don't necessarily think a lot about, and you're newly married, but you guys have been together for a while, and
Yeah, we've been together for 9 years, so
yeah, and you're not 22 either.
no,
So like
that's when we
that's
met.
yeah, I mean, I just feel like that's a lot of like I had like buddies from college, that like they married their college girlfriend like right after that we got out of school.
Yeah, no.
And they haven't even figured their own stuff out yet. You know
Well,
what I mean? And like
I'm very
they're
fortunate
still
though because he's a gamer too.
oh, there you go.
So
Oh, I
I
didn't even know
mean,
he played.
yeah, I mean he's been on the stream a few times, but again, I try to keep that
Yeah.
business and pleasure separate a little bit. So he's actually played with Lopez and I when we've been playing Hunt. But he's a big gamer too. So actually, like to the right of me right now, there's his PC. So we have matching PCs. We have his and her PCs in the same room. We have matching computer chairs, everything. Like we're disgusting. I know. Uh, But half the time, like we're sitting at home, I'm like, "What do you want to do?" He's like, "I don't know. You want to play some video games?" And it's like, sweet. So he goes in his little world and does his games, and then I go in my little world and I do my games. So I guess I'm very fortunate in the fact that I found somebody that really likes video games as well, But I have those friends, and mostly it's men, obviously, that they have the wives that really hate them playing video games, and I kind of feel bad for him. It's a good outlet, It's just a chance for you to forget about the stresses of daily life and gives you something else to focus on.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, not to get overly deep, but I my dad died February 19th was the 6-year anniversary of my dad passing away. And
Sorry, I'm sorry.
oh, thanks. We were real close. It's the worst thing I've ever dealt with in my life. And it almost like I was so depressed after it almost cost me my marriage. I mean, because I was sad, I was mad, and I took it all out on my wife, right? Like I didn't hit her or anything like that, but you
Well,
know what I mean?
right. Yeah.
I just was not in a good place, and she was the closest person to you, right? So anytime that anger or sadness or whatever, it was always directed at her. And, she finally said, you really have got to go see someone or we're not going to survive this, right? Like you've got to figure out, like I was hoping you would come out of it, but you're just not coming out of it.
Hmm.
And so, um, so I went to see a therapist, and and it's like the greatest thing I've ever done. Now I've tried to become like a huge advocate for therapy. Like I have a podcast. I found out a couple of years ago, a friend of mine's son who was 18 killed himself. He shot himself.
Oh my God.
And a girl I went to high school with, and it was one of those things where, and again, like I don't know enough about it, but based on some of the things I've heard and the things I've heard her and her husband say, is they thought something was wrong, but they didn't do anything. Like they would always just chalk it up to like teenage angst or, you know what I mean? Which I think is
Yeah.
not, I don't blame them at all. I'm not saying it's their fault, but I'm saying that there's this weird stigma about your mental health, and people wanting to say or do something. Like if you thought someone's leg was broken, you take them to the fucking hospital. But when their mind's broken, we just kind of ignore it.
No,
Um,
yeah, totally. I 100% agree.
and so I did this solo cast about, and I always try to encourage people, but what I'm driving at was it's the best thing I ever did. But one of the big things that we talked about, with that my therapist talked to me about is, um, there are coping mechanisms and there are avoidance mechanisms, right? So, and they're different, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but coping is like when you're actually trying to work it out, right? Like coping is like where you're trying to fix it to the best of your ability and then put it away. Avoidance is when you're going into a place and you can't cope right now, so you just do something else to push it out. And it's like,
Right.
I know I'm gonna have to deal with that later, but I don't want to let myself sink into this like sort of dark place right now. So I'm gonna go do something to just get my mind off it.
Right.
And those are things, and it's funny, like, the first time I thought when I was in therapy, like, she says, "Get out a piece of paper, and we're gonna write all these down." And she goes, "What are some things you like to do?" And, she goes and I said, like, "I like to play video games. I like to have sex. I like to," you know what I mean?
Right.
I like to, I like to make sandwiches, you know what I mean? Or
I like
omelets.
to
I do.
watch Food Network.
Yeah, I like to watch football. And so she's like, "Okay." And she goes, "Here's the thing. It sounds ridiculous, but like if you feel yourself going there, it is absolutely okay for you to go to your wife and say, 'I need to do this right now.' Right? This is not about me not wanting to be with you or not wanting to do whatever, but I'm not
Right.
happy. I'm upset. I don't feel good. I need to escape. I need to get away. I need," and again, she's like, "If she'll have sex with you, that's great. If you want to play a game or if you want to cook some food." But she's like, "But these are actually tools, and you can't abuse it, right? And just be like, I've always got." So I what I am is I'm agreeing with you 100%. Like it's good for your mental health sometime to have something that will allow you to just sort of check out, right? Or to concentrate on something else,
Yeah.
right? Other than just your life.
It's funny that you say therapy too, because I've said this to so many people that gaming for me is like free therapy. It's, I mean, I guess more so like before I met some of my friends online than I did, but when I first started playing with them, it's strangers that you're talking to that don't know anybody else in your personal life, and they just know what you are telling them, and it's a way to get a different perspective from other people. Like people that you don't know are okay with telling you that you're full of shit, or that the way you're thinking about that isn't right, or they're not afraid to tell you that you're wrong. And it's kind of like a therapist. Like some days when I'm really open and honest about this on my stream, that I about 5 years ago developed really bad anxiety,
Mhm.
and it led me down this horrible road of depression and health problems because I just thought I was never going to get better. I was never going to get better. And I would just black out randomly. And it was because I had a serotonin deficiency. Like my body just decided like, oh, fuck it. We don't need this anymore. But apparently you do.
Yeah.
And I did have to go to therapy. And I mean, eventually after like 10 specialists, it got to the point where, like you said, like I thought I was going to lose my relationship because I was just a horrible person to be around. And it had
Mhm.
nothing to do with him, but it was because I was so upset that I felt horrible. Like I had all of this stuff happening to me and I didn't understand why. And I just thought I was never going to get better. Therapy, I guess, in that sense, didn't really work so well for me because it was a physical issue. I wasn't actually depressed because something horrible happened to me. I was depressed because I thought I was never going to get better. But I mean, once they figured out, once I finally talked to a professional, she was like, yeah, I think you got a serotonin problem here. Take this store-bought serotonin and you'll be fine. And she was right. Like I stopped blacking out and, things started getting better. But because of that, because I became like a hypochondriac, like parts of
Yep.
my body go numb sometimes, like my jaw and my arm. And like, God, you think you're having a heart attack or something. It makes you think something horrible is happening to you, but it's not. It's just anxiety. And that's something that I did to myself and I have to live with now. But sometimes I don't feel good. And talking to people on stream about that is knowing somebody else out there feels that way too it's reassuring. It's like free therapy.
Yeah, and that's why I tell a lot of my friends, that because at this point in the game, like there are certainly technical or tactical things that a therapist can do to help you.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not your case where it's chemical or medical or something that is
Right.
not just like like your mind is not jamming. I mean, it's all chemical, but in your case, there was a specific right thing.
Yeah.
Um, eh, at this point, like they can do some tactical things, but it's not like a physical injury, where it's like, oh, well, we'll give you this shot, we'll put this cast on you, we'll go in and do this surgery. It's obviously a little more art than science in that way. But the thing that now and why I still go 6 years later is, if you think about it, and again, I'm reinforcing what you just said, everyone in your life is in your life because you have a personal relationship with them. And so it's hard even with your partner, your spouse, is because if it has the things to do with them, it's sometimes hard to have those
You can't
conversations.
talk to it about that it with
I mean,
them.
the thing is when I'm in that room with Amy, who's my therapist, I can say anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? And and honestly, like just the ability to say stuff out loud. Like if she didn't do anything, if she just sat there, it would be worth it because I can just unload and she's not going to judge me. She's not. Now, if I say something crazy or wrong or you know what I mean, or she thinks, she'll definitely check you and say, well, I don't know if you're thinking about that the right way or whatever. But
Right. Maybe you should think about it from a different point of view or
because sometimes too it can be horrible things, right? Like things that you wouldn't say in society, right? Like because of the repercussions. Like
right.
I joke around about like, hating, like hating kids or whatever, but like that's not something I'm just gonna break out at a party. You know what I mean? Like with
Yeah, no, for sure.
like with a
I
bunch of
say that I've said that to customers that at my work I'm like, nah. They're like, don't you have kids? And I'm like, no, I hate kids. And they're like, they
yeah,
just like I said something horrible. Like it's okay. You don't have to like children. Like let's be honest, they're little shits, and the only reason you like them is because you popped it out and you have to
that's
deal with
right.
it.
Because
Okay,
it's yours.
like
That's exactly right. Because it's yours. But even things that are just so inappropriate that you'd never act on, like like again, like I mean, I wouldn't advocate this at all, but I mean, we're just being real. But like, like God, this person today did something, and all I wanted to do was punch them in the face. Like I
yeah,
just physically assault them, right? And honestly, if you said that to someone that
they would
knew
think
you,
you were violent, or they
they
would
would
think like,
violent,
man, you've got an
crazy.
issue.
That's right, and it really wasn't. I'm trying to express and relay my emotion to this person and explain it where I was because I don't care what anybody says. Everybody in the world is someone has made them mad enough to where they wanted to kick them in the shins,
Oh,
right? Like
for
it's just
sure.
right, but the ability to just be able to let that fly, and 9 times out of 10, like I say it every time I leave a session, I feel like I had a bag of bricks that I left in the office.
Yeah.
I just feel better just from unloading, right? And just getting things out. So I'm a huge proponent. I feel like if anybody's listening, and I always say this, and you do, go go. It's not expensive. It's usually covered by insurance if you have it.
Yeah,
Um,
most
if
always it's covered by insurance.
if you don't have insurance and you tell, and you don't have to go, and I'm not talking about a psychiatrist or a psychologist, like you can go to an LPC, which is a licensed professional counselor. They're not doctors, they can't prescribe medicine or whatever, but they can still help. Like I go to an LPC, I don't go to an MD, right, or a psychiatrist. Um, they'll usually, if you tell them it's like I'm a cash, I don't have insurance or I can't, they'll work out something with you because they don't have to
Hmm.
file paperwork and do all that stuff. Like generally, my experience has been they're really cool. And
There's
usually,
stuff
if
online too. There's therapists online. There's apps for it that you can do. You can speak with a therapist right from your phone now. Like you don't even have to leave your house anymore
yeah,
to do it.
yeah, and it's so because I just know most people just are scared of it, or they feel like they're ashamed of it, or they feel like they're broken and that there's something wrong with, you know what I mean? And like I don't want people to, because that was me, because I fought it for a long time until, like, honestly, the idea of losing my wife is what it took
It's
for me to be like,
terrifying.
oh fuck, like I can't, that can't happen. You know what I mean? Like that can't happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's
So,
why I initially went because I pretty much told myself like if you don't do something, you're not gonna make it out alive. That's honestly what it came down to. It had. I was terrified of losing him, even though he would reassure me like I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you. Like I know it stressed him out. I could see it. Like he felt
mm,
horrible. He's really bad with emotions. Like if I'm crying, like he doesn't know what to do. Like he's like
mm,
deer in the headlights. Like oh god, what do I do? And I think that's a big thing for like a lot of guys. Like he's not good with emotions. So like I don't have that outlet with him. I can talk to him about anything, but I just don't. If I need emotional support, like I just know it's not there for him. So to have a therapist, it is good. And I said that therapy didn't work for me. I want to take that back. It did in a sort where some of the things that they talk to you about, like they give you tools to cope with your bad situation. Because obviously anxiety was really bad. It was really physical for me, and I just kept going in and out of the ER because I was blacking out and nobody could tell me what was happening to me. And God forbid I was driving one time when that happened or
ooh,
something.
yeah.
So I mean, I was scared all the time. I was terrified all the time. And one of the people that I spoke to was just really great, and she was able to tell me like you can breathe through it, or just coping mechanisms. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like ways to deal with it, or just to tell you that the way you're thinking about yourself isn't okay. Like you need to treat yourself with more compassion, and like it's okay to to feel bad.
Absolutely. I mean, and it does. Oh, J Pods and Chatty saying they give you the tools, you got to put in the work.
Yeah.
Um, it takes a lot of effort. It absolutely does. But I think for a lot of people, at least for me, it's like I didn't know where to start. You know what I mean? Like it's
I
almost
didn't
like,
either. I went online and Googled it. Believe
yeah,
it or
like
not.
I mean, I was
I was
just in
like,
a
this
hole.
person's got 4.5 stars. I'm gonna,
Yeah.
I'm gonna, I'm like, they must be good.
But I mean, before I even got to that part, I'm talking about like getting better. I didn't know where to start. Like I
Neither did
knew
I.
I was unhappy. I knew I was hurting my wife. I knew I was not fun to be around. I just didn't know what to do.
Yeah, and it's to
Um,
the point where you don't even want to be around yourself.
yeah, absolutely. And it actually reminds me of a really great story that I tell a lot of people that I think puts it in a that puts it in perspective is so there's a guy and he's walking along and he falls in a hole, and he's down the hole and the sides are smooth, and he can't get out, and he's trying, he can't climb up, and then someone walks by and he goes, hey, I'm stuck, can you get me out? And they're like, sure, let me see if I can go find a rope, and they leave, and then you're still in the hole and you don't come out. And another person comes by and they say, hey, can you please help me out? And the person goes, yeah, let me see if I can go find a fire truck or a policeman, and then
Or a
they leave.
ladder or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're just standing there, and then a third person comes by and says, hey, I'm stuck, and that guy jumps in the hole, and the person that was down there at the beginning goes, what are you doing? Now we're both down in this hole. And the guy that jumped in the hole says, yeah, but I've been here before and I know the way out.
That's awesome.
And
That's beautiful, actually.
that was a story that when one of my first sessions, my therapist told me, and she's like, I'm going to help you be the guy that knows the way out. And that is how you, that's the trick, because there's really not so much a curing of yourself. I mean, again, I'm not nearly as bad because I've dealt with my father's death and, the stuff with all that. But I'll go ahead and tell you straight up, if I hadn't, I mean, again, you think about things that are blessing. I'm not a religious guy, but whatever you want to call that, right? Like sort of cosmic alignment or whatever. But the stuff I went through with my health and almost dying, and waking up in a hospital and not being able to walk or move or eat or do anything, like if I hadn't done all the things I'd done to try to get better after my dad, I don't know what I would have done. Like, I don't know how I could have mentally survived waking up in a hospital 7 weeks after you dropped in your kitchen,
Oof.
right? And going, "What is going on?" Right? Like,
No, I
because
agree.
I have a black, like, I remember calling 911, going I remember seeing my feet on the pavement, getting out of the ambulance at the hospital near my house, and the next thing I remember is waking up 7 weeks later in a different hospital, in a different part of Atlanta. Like, that whole, like, month and a half is just gone.
So what
And
happened exactly? I'm not. I never heard.
so, basically, I had gotten diagnosed with gallstones, and I had surgery scheduled to remove my gallbladder. And, generally, it's a super common surgery. There's
Yeah.
no real after effects. It's no big deal. It's outpatient, you know what I mean? There's nothing to it. And the week or week and a half prior to me, a gallstone lodged lodged. So your liver and your pancreas, you have your bile duct, which comes from your liver, and your pancreatic duct, which comes from your pancreas, and they actually merge together
Mm-hmm.
right before they hit your small intestine.
Mm-hmm.
And a gallstone is on the bile duct tract. So a gallstone had jumped out of my gallbladder, ran down the bile duct, and lodged itself right at the junction of
Oh my God.
my pancreatic duct and my bile duct. So what happens is you get
Everything
bile
backed
backing up
up.
into your
Yep.
liver and pancreatic fluid backing up into your pancreas. And in most cases, in that scenario, you're gonna start to have your liver's gonna start to freak out, and then you're gonna get pancreatitis, which is like a swelling of the pancreas, which is very dangerous. Um, in very rare cases, which was mine, um, you get what's called necrotizing pancreatitis, where the freaking out of the pancreas, I mean, the only way I can think to describe it is it starts to die, it starts to melt, right? Like it effectively just starts to dead. And then the problem with me is then it starts throwing off dead tissue because it's dying. And then dead tissue in your abdomen causes sepsis.
Oh my
So,
God.
so then you have a blood infection. So like when I
Yep.
got to the hospital, by the time they figured out what was going on, my pancreas was going, my liver was totally freaked out, and I was septic,
Jesus.
and and I was swollen and distended, and the whole thing was just, they were trying to get, and they could, because there was so much swelling, they couldn't actually get to the stone to get it out, so it was just stuck there. Like even with surgery, like they'd cut me open and they couldn't get to the thing, and they're trying to get me stabilized. And my best friend in the world who lives in Kentucky, my wife called him and he got in his car and was at my side in like 7 hours, right? Like he literally put all his shit in a bag in like 30 minutes and left and drove 6 hours down here. Um, and at some point they didn't tell me this story until later, but at some point he pulled the doctor aside and just said, I need you to tell me like, what are we really dealing with here? And the doctor said, it's about a 50-50 shot on whether he ever wakes up.
Oh my God.
And like fortunately I woke up and I made it out. There's not, there's some lingering. I mean, I don't have a pancreas anymore. So like I basically went from being totally normal to effectively being a type 1 diabetic because I can't produce insulin. I don't have the
Right.
organ that makes insulin. Um I lost a kidney in there too, which we found out later, like because just the collateral damage killed
Jesus,
my
man.
right kidney.
You're so
Um
lucky.
Yeah, I mean, now the good part of it is if you're gonna lose organs, like a kidney's the one to lose
Right.
because you gotta spare. But yeah, but it's funny because people were like, and don't get me wrong, like when I was out of it, there was some anger, and my wife
Yeah.
definitely told me where I got mad at some nurses from time to time, and that sort of stuff. But once I got back into like a regular sort of mental place, I was never mad, or like I was just really grateful to not be dead. And um and I was able to leverage a lot of the stuff that I learned dealing with my dad to help get me through like that whole thing. But I do think it was harder on my wife than it was on me, because she was having to deal with it all while I was just basically unconscious, you know?
Right.
So, um, so it was really, it was scary. It was, again, I was on my back for 6 months. I was out of work. Um, it was, and oh, so again, like talking about community. So that was the whole thing with Lopez was, I didn't show up in chat for like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, I heard
And,
about this story. I've heard this
and he
story.
and he just knew something was wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "That's just weird," right? Like, because if he went somewhere, he probably would have told me, you know? And
Yeah.
and that's how he ended up getting in touch with Holly, and Holly told him, and, he and Krista came to see me and all that sort of stuff. Um, but, again, the power of the whole community thing, like, he knew something was fishy, like, he's like, "Where is he?"
Yeah, I've had
'Cause I
people do that to me if I don't say anything for a few days. I've had people reach out and they're like, "Hey, you okay? Like, everything all right?" Like, yeah, I'm just need to be away from the internet for a while, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because the other thing too is obviously the last thing, like, Holly is my wife's name is Holly. Holly is thinking about is, putting out a Facebook post or something to let people know
Right. Oh,
what's
yeah,
going
she's
on.
dealing with a
She's trying
lot.
to keep
Like,
me
you're
alive,
about to lose.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
And deal with the hospitals and, just all that stuff, and that's a whole nother conversation about, if you ever do find yourself in a scenario when you're sick, the two things if I can give anybody any advice on takeaways is, understand that there's no better advocate for you than you, and that you're in charge, right? Like you're the customer. Now, I don't mean that you should ignore the advice of doctors, but ask lots of questions. Don't let people feel like they can not explain shit to you, right? Like, because I think a lot of people go and feel like, well, they're doctors, so they're like God, but they're humans, and you need to ask questions and make
Yeah, I
sure
learned
you're
that was not
comfortable,
true during my
right?
experience. Like, it was hard. Nobody believed me. Nobody. It was like the most heartbreaking and frustrating experience of my life. I saw a well, first it started with the numbness, right? So that's how the anxiety started, which who would have thought that parts of your body going numb was from anxiety? That's when the serotonin deficiency started. And so I started with a chiropractor. And then since it was all in my jaw and my neck and my arm, he was like, maybe you should see a dentist. So I saw a dentist. Then she told me to go to a cardiologist. And then he told me to go to a neurologist. And then just like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in tests and blood work, and everybody telling me like, you're super healthy, there's nothing wrong with you, like you're too young for this. Like, I got that a lot. You're too young for this. Like, obviously I'm not, because it's happening. And
Right.
like, nobody could help me. I'm not even kidding when I say that I saw like 8 or 9 different like specialists, not just doctors, but specialists, and nobody could tell me what was wrong with me. And it was terrifying. And then for some reason I went to an ENT, because like I was having a hard time like with the left side by my ear, and ironically all of this has been happening on the left side. And finally, after my third visit to this girl, the nurse looks at me and she's like, honey, I think you have anxiety. And I was like, what? No, like, you don't understand. Like, it's so physical. I'm blacking out. Whatever. She was like, I've seen this before, I swear. And she was the one who told me to go talk to a therapist. And after I started, and I think this is another really important thing. The first therapist I went to was not a match, right? Like,
Yes.
therapy is
Yes.
like dating, okay?
That's
Like,
exactly.
if you like, if this is your first time going to therapy and the first person you meet up with, you're like, oh, that guy was a dick, and you're like, I'm never going to therapy again, please don't let that guy be the standard for you. Like, I went through 4 different therapists before I found my love match quote
Yeah.
unquote, and she's amazing and she's so wonderful and so caring and so empathetic, and she was really the match for me. So therapy is like dating. You gotta go through a couple bad eggs before you find a good one,
Yeah.
And
Amy was my third one. So yeah,
yeah, see?
absolutely.
So the first one you go to probably isn't going to be your match, but that's okay. They pushed me in the right direction to find somebody else that was going to be my right match, right? And I swear to God, the first time I sat with her, she was just like, you have a serotonin deficiency. Like, she just knew instantly. She was like, take this, tell me how you feel. Like, I told her I was really uncomfortable taking medication. Like, I don't even like taking Tylenol, right? Like, I don't like taking any kind of pill at all. And she was like, okay, if you feel uncomfortable, that's fine. But she's like, I just really think it's going to help you. And because I trusted her, because she was the one person I actually did trust at that time, I finally did it. And I swear to God, I felt better instantly, like instantly. And I think therapy in the right hands is very good, but it's like dating. You got to try it for a little bit. Like, don't, just because the first time doesn't work, you get back on the bike and you try again,
Yeah, and it's not magic. It's 100% a process, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not gonna just all of a sudden get. Although I did when I finally met Amy, I left that first session like, I mean, I wasn't cured, but like I could tell that the best way I can describe it is I could tell I was on the right train.
Right.
You know what I mean? It
You
wasn't
felt
like
different. Like, you
yeah, I
felt
wasn't
good about her as a person though when you left that room.
yeah, and I wasn't healed, but I felt like I was in the right hands, right? Like I felt like I was in the right I
Right.
was in the right place to get to where I was trying to get to,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and again, we got and I for people with medical stuff, like I feel like we got really lucky because, you know, my wife was a medical reporter for a lot of years, and she knows a lot about that stuff even though she's not a doctor, and we had a lot of people that really helped us, and I got lucky because I'm in a huge city. Emory University Hospital here is one of the best research hospitals in the southeast. And I was at a different place where frankly I think they made some bad decisions. um and I guess I bring this up because I feel bad because I know that I'm very lucky, like not only lucky and cosmically and like how it worked out, but lucky in that we had resources and people to help us. Because one of the things that was funny is how my wife sort of knew inherently that maybe the people at the hospital I was at didn't have the right expertise to be able to help me because my case was so weird.
Yeah.
um, and it was so severe. And believe it or not, Sanjay Gupta from CNN, they worked together when he first came in, and she actually was on the phone with him and called him and said, um, "I don't know that we're in the right place." And he goes, um, "What's going on?" She kind of explained it to him, and he goes, "Okay, I know the doctor that he needs to see. She's at Emory." And he goes, "Let me call you back in 10 minutes." And so 10 minutes later, Sanjay called Holly back and said, okay, her name is Carla Hack, and she saved my life. And I still like, I love her. I mean, I adore her. Like, obviously she treated me for a long time. And, um, he was like, her name's Carla Hack. She's at Emory and they're waiting for you. So just go ahead and get the transfer
Oh my God, I just
together.
got chills.
And yeah, and like, and even crazier was, so and I don't remember any of this, but I was so swollen and they had opened me up, to do surgery. They couldn't actually close me back up. Um, so because they couldn't close me back up, they couldn't put me in a helicopter, like to life flight me. So they took me in an ambulance, open,
Oh
like
my God.
from where I was over to the other hospital, and it was about 20 miles or so. So, like, if there'd been an accident or something, like, while in transit, like, I'm dead, right? Like, that's it. Like, game over. If somebody hits the ambulance, if something's like, because I'm literally like, my stomach is from right below my chest bone down to below my belly button is cut open.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, and
Nope, no sound.
Hey, are you there?
Yep.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
So this is what happens when you this is what happens when you put a power strip underneath your desk
And you kick it with your foot?
and you hit the switch on the power switch. On the power strip. So anyway, but then like we get to Emory and my wife was talking to the intake people or whatever, and she's saying my name, and this was like 11:30 at night on like a Thursday or something. And this little Puerto Rican lady says to my wife, "Are you Holly, Arnold?" And she goes, "Yeah." And she goes, "You're Sean's wife?" And she goes, "Yeah." And she goes, "I'm Carla Hack. We're like we were waiting for you." And then she's like, "We're taking him into surgery right now."
Oh my God.
And that was sort of how that all went down. So it was uh it was a crazy psycho experience. But again, like
At least
if
you were
my wife,
out for most of it.
yeah,
I
but if
mean,
my wife doesn't make that call, right? Like if she doesn't make that decision, like who knows what happens. And again, that was like we're in the wrong hospital. Like most of the time, I think most people think like, well, any old hospital, you know what I mean? Like it's a
right.
hospital. It
A
should be the
doctor's a
same.
doctor. That's not the
Right.
case.
100%. Like same thing you were saying with therapy. Like you got to be paying real good attention. And if something doesn't feel right, you need to raise your hand and start asking people questions.
Well, I mean, same thing with those doctors. Like I saw like 7 or 8 or 9, God, I don't even know anymore, specialists. And I saw a neurologist who, for Christ's sakes, like this should be in your field. And
Right.
I have to have just some like nurse in an ENT office tell me like this is what's wrong with you. And I swear to God, like I sent this woman flowers. I reached out to like I went to her office. I was crying. I hugged her. I thanked her. Like she changed my life. And all these specialists who, I mean, some of these guys, like they were old enough to be the crypt keeper, okay? Like out of all of their years of experience, couldn't tell me what was happening to me with all of these. Everybody thought I was lying. Nobody thought I was serious. And you have all of these people who are supposed to be a specialty or, like this amazing person in their field, and they're not. They're human. They call it a practice for a reason.
It is weird, like that you call it practice. Well, I tell you what, we're right at about 2 hours, which is usually about my normal thing. So
Time flies when you're having fun.
I know. So I'm just gonna roll out and then we'll stick around for a second, if that's cool with you.
Yeah.
Since you're still streaming. But you guys check out my friend Kerrty. I'll link all this stuff in the description, but it's twitch.tv/Kerrty. That's 2 R's, Kerrty. She's Kerrty Live on all the social medias. And she rocks. So come come hang out with all the degenerates in her chat when she's streaming games. We'll direct you to all the proper clips
Oh
that
my
you
God,
need
please
to
don't.
know. Like she hates birds. She's very food judgy.
I love birds.
She's very food judgy. There's all kinds of stuff we can direct you to. To show, but she's very fun. But as always, I appreciate you guys listening. I'm at Sean ATL on Twitter, and then you know where the pod is because you're listening, but it's on all of your pod channels. So Kerrty, thanks for hanging out with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun, honestly.
Yeah, all right. Well, until next time, guys, press on.